Yo, what's the plan? Devon X Scott back, and if you didn't copy your X t-shirts yet, Devon X Scott t-shirts, just check below the link in the description or just go to devonxscott.com/shop. But that's enough plugs for today. So the S9 and S9 Plus just dropped and everybody excited about it. But before I jump into the video, I want to say a huge shout out to my friend Danny Winget for letting me use some of his footage in this video. Huge shout out. If you don't know Danny Winget, you're living under a rock. And if you're living under a rock and you don't know him, I'll leave his channel link below in the description. Just check out his channel, subscribe, of course, because he helped me out. So huge thanks to him. So let me get to the S9. The first thing is the design. So the S8 and the S8 Plus, I don't think anything was wrong to design. I actually like the way the S8 and the S8 Plus was designed. And the S9 and S9 Plus kind of looks exactly the same way, except that the number one complaint that was made about the S8 is finally fixed, which was it had a horrible fingerprint sensor placement. Like it wasn't a problem for me because I was a left-hander, but if it's a right-hander, you had to stretch all the way up by the camera and it was just not making any sense. Now under the camera lens, much easier to reach. That was a very good decision. And also for the people who love to listen to music, the headphone jack still lives on the S9 and S9 Plus. So kudos to Samsung for not killing off the headphone jack. So with the S8 and S8 Plus as well, the only difference with both of them, if you was trying to figure out which one is best for you, was the size. And based on the size, you would just get like a higher battery capacity on the Plus variant because it was a bigger device. Not the case with the S9 and S9 Plus. So it actually have a few things that makes the S9 Plus a little more powerful than the S9 that you should definitely take into consideration. The first one of those is the RAM. So with both variants, you have 64 gigabytes of built-in storage with the option for micro SD card slot. But with the S9, you have 4 gigs of RAM as opposed to 6 gigs with the S9 Plus. The next thing is the battery, of course. One of the devices bigger, so you have 3500 milliamps on the S9 Plus, whereas you have 3000 milliamps on the S9. Another thing is the cameras. So if you go for the S9, you'll have one single lens. If you go for the S9 Plus, you'll have the dual lens setup. But while we're on the cameras, that's kind of like the biggest thing that I'm most excited about that I actually wanted to talk about in this video. So variable aperture. In my mind, in my knowledge, I think is the S9 and S9 Plus is the first set of mobile devices with these tiny sensors that actually have a variable aperture. And if you don't know what that is, basically the wider the aperture, the more natural lights get into the sensor. So think of this small, there would be so much light, but only a little bit will get into the actual sensor itself. But if the aperture opens bigger, the more light gets let into the sensor, which means that they actually have so much more natural light. There's no need for digital brightness, which brings down the noise level of everything on the whole. So you get much cleaner photos in low light. And the S9 and S9 Plus have a variable aperture of 1.5 to 2.4, which is amazing. I don't think I ever saw a smartphone with an aperture of less than 1.5, which is kind of amazing. But another thing you should take into consideration, the lower the aperture, yes, the more light you get into the sensor. But there's also a trade-off. The shallower the depth of field is, meaning the less of the photo would be in focus. So if you want extremely sharp photos, you should definitely switch it to 2.4, although I think you'll be doing this automatically, and just in low light it would switch to the 1.5 lens, which is like a perfect setup for photography in general on a smartphone. Switch to the 1.5 in low light, get much cleaner photos, no noise, and then in bright daylight you just switch back to the 2.4, extremely sharp photos. This is kind of amazing to know that it have this technology in a tiny smartphone sensor. Another huge thing is the fact that the S9 and S9 Plus could shoot 960 frames per second at 720p, which is amazing for a smartphone. And it doesn't work the way you would think. It's a little smarter than that. So you don't just press the record button and start recording in 960 FPS. That might actually fry the device. But what it does is it lets you set a specific area of the frame that you want to wait for motion. And once it senses that motion, it kind of triggers it and starts recording the footage, which some people might like, some people might not like, but I think is a cool trade-off for having 960 frames per second on a smartphone. So of course with the S9 we have a few other things like being able to live translate stuff in the camera app. Of course, if you have any Android or iOS device, you could do this with Google Translate, but the S9 and S9 Plus actually has it baked in to the stock native camera, which is cool. So you don't need to download anything extra, just pull up your camera and you can do this. And also there's this weird live makeup thing, so you could actually see yourself with live makeup on. And if you like the makeup, if you like how you're looking, you could actually purchase the makeup. Sure, these makeup companies love this feature. And I actually think Danny make a really beautiful woman. You don't think so? So another thing upgraded with the S9 is the speakers. We all know the S8 and S8 Plus didn't have the best speakers in the world, but with the S9 and S9 Plus, they have sort of a setup like we had on the iPhone 8, 8 Plus and iPhone 10, where there's a stereo setup between the downward facing speaker and the earpiece speaker. So it should I don't know how good the quality would be. Hopefully I'll get it in hand soon and be able to check it out. Hopefully there's a quality bump. If there's not, at least it'll be a better experience, because one of those speakers would actually be facing you when you're actually consuming media. So that's a huge plus. As for pricing, it's $720 and $840 respectively. Typical flagship price. I don't see anything weird there, except that it's now more expensive than the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus. So hopefully the S9 and S9 Plus reaches here in Trinidad soon. I'll be able to have some hands-on times with it and give you guys a full review. Thanks so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think about the S9 and S9 Plus below in the comments. And thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.